There is someone in your life right now who has already finished deciding what you are worth to them. They did not announce it. They did not warn you. They smiled, asked how your week was going, and while you were answering, while you were mid-sentence, mid-breath, something behind their eyes was running numbers. Not on your intelligence, not on your status, on your availability. Whether the way you move through the world, the way you hold eye contact, absorb silence, respond to pressure, marks you as someone who will tolerate what is done to him and find a reason to call it normal. 7 behaviors. You are broadcasting at least 2 of them right now, and by the time this is over, you will never broadcast them again. In 1513, a man who had been tortured, exiled, and stripped of every title he had ever held sat in a farmhouse outside Florence and wrote the most dangerous book in Western political history. Niccolo Machiavelli did not write The Prince from theory. He wrote it from scar tissue. He had watched republics fall, watched allies betray each other mid-handshake, watched men he respected destroyed, not by stronger enemies, but by their own inability to read the room they were standing in. And in that farmhouse, surrounded by nothing but failed ambition and perfect memory, he wrote a single line that contains the entire architecture of what we are about to dismantle together. Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. He was not calling people stupid. He was identifying a mechanism, a pattern of behavioral signals that human beings emit involuntarily, signals that tell predatory personalities one thing with absolute clarity: this one will not stop me. Modern behavioral science has a name for this. It is called target viability assessment, the unconscious process by which predatory individuals evaluate whether a potential target will resist, report, or retaliate. This assessment does not happen in a single moment. It happens across multiple interactions. A comment here, a reaction there. The way you handle a small slight at dinner. The way you respond when someone takes credit for your work. The way your face changes when you feel dismissed. Each of these moments is a data point, and the predatory mind collects them the way a chess player collects positional advantages, quietly, patiently, until the position is so favorable that the final move carries no risk at all. The 7 behaviors in this video are not personality flaws. They are not signs of weakness in any moral sense. They are signal patterns, involuntary broadcasts that function like a green light in the predatory assessment framework, and every single one of them has a polite name that makes it look like a virtue. Patience, flexibility, honesty, kindness, openness, loyalty, availability. Those are the words used in polite company. In the language of dark behavioral psychology, they have different names entirely. The reason these behaviors are so dangerous is not that predators are brilliant. It is that the signals predate the encounter. You did not develop these patterns in response to manipulation. You developed them long before any predator entered your life. Most of these signals were installed in childhood, by environments that rewarded compliance, punished boundary setting, and taught you that your safety depended on making other people comfortable. The child who learned that expressing anger resulted in withdrawal of love learned to suppress visible resistance. The child who learned that saying no resulted in punishment learned to say yes reflexively. The child who learned that being difficult meant being abandoned learned to be endlessly accommodating. These adaptations were intelligent. They were survival strategies built by a young mind that correctly assessed its environment and optimized for safety. The problem is not that you developed them. The problem is that you still run them in environments where they no longer protect you, but expose you. Jung identified this with surgical precision. He called it the persona, the mask of adaptation that the psyche constructs to navigate its social environment. The persona is not false. It is functional. But when the persona becomes permanent, when it calcifies into the only way you know how to interact with the world, it stops being a tool you use and becomes a cage you live inside. And that cage has a very specific shape. It is shaped like someone who will not push back, someone who will absorb discomfort rather than create it, someone whose boundaries are suggestions rather than walls. The predator does not create your vulnerability. The predator recognizes it. The signal was already broadcasting. They simply tuned in. Machiavelli saw this 500 years ago. The people who allow themselves to be deceived are not choosing deception. They are running old code, behavioral patterns that once meant survival and now mean selection. Tell me in the comments, which of those childhood patterns do you recognize as still running in your adult life? The compliance, the reflexive yes, the fear of being difficult. Name it. You do not have to explain it. Just name it. Subscribe if you want to keep going. The 7 behaviors are next, and each one will land differently now that you understand where they come from. The first behavior is the one that gives everything else away. You react. Not in extreme circumstances, not when someone attacks you directly. You react to small things, minor provocations, the kind of low-grade friction that a settled man absorbs without it registering on his face. Someone says something mildly dismissive, and your expression shifts. Someone questions a decision you made, and your posture changes. Someone delivers a backhanded compliment, and the energy in your response reveals that it landed. You did not choose to react. It happened before the choice. In dark psychology, this is called emotional permeability, the measurable degree to which your internal state can be altered by an external social stimulus. High emotional permeability tells the predatory mind one thing: your interior is accessible from the outside. And accessible from the outside means controllable from the outside. Because the moment they know which stimuli alter your emotional state, they know which inputs to deliver. They can make you defensive to get you to over-explain. They can make you guilty to get you to over-accommodate. They can make you angry to get you to make a mistake they can reference against you later. You are not being read. You are being operated. Marcus Aurelius, who governed the most powerful empire on earth while surrounded by political predators every single day, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That was not philosophy. That was survival protocol. The second behavior is quieter, but it bleeds information faster than the first. They asked a simple question, or they made a mildly skeptical comment, or they just looked at you with an expression that suggested they were not fully convinced, and you talked for 4 minutes. Not because 4 minutes of information was required, because the discomfort of their uncertainty about you was too intense to sit with. This is called justification flooding, the behavioral pattern in which a person responds to perceived judgment with an excessive volume of self-justifying information. It tells the predatory mind 3 things simultaneously. First, this person's sense of security can be destabilized by expressing doubt. Doubt is a lever. Second, this person will overshare under social pressure. Pressure is an extraction tool. Third, this person requires the approval of the person they are speaking to in order to feel right. Approval withdrawal is a control mechanism. 3 weapons delivered freely by you because someone raised an eyebrow. The correction is not silence. The correction is economy. State your position. If they need more, they will ask. And if they do not ask, the absence of their approval costs you nothing because you never needed it. The third behavior operates in a different environment entirely. Not in confrontation, in intimacy, in the spaces where you feel safe. That is precisely why it is so much more dangerous. You told them too much too soon, not because they asked, because they were warm to you, and warmth felt like safety, and safety felt like an invitation to be fully known. So you shared things that were real, your history, your fears, your past failures, the wounds still healing, the insecurities you have not yet converted into discipline. You handed them the complete map of your interior. And in the predatory assessment framework, a detailed map of someone's interior is not a gift. It is an acquisition. The predatory personality cultivates the exact conditions that trigger this. They are warm early, unusually warm. They share something personal, often manufactured, to create the illusion of mutual vulnerability. Clinical psychology calls this manufactured rapport, the deliberate creation of deep connection through mirroring, strategic self-disclosure, and targeted validation. When you share your fears early, you hand them a targeting system. When you share your past failures, you hand them a credibility attack vector. When you share your deepest insecurities, you hand them the precise language they will use to destabilize you the moment your interests diverge. The rule is not coldness. The rule is earned access. Information about your interior is territory you allow people to enter after they have demonstrated over time that they will protect what is inside it. The fourth behavior looks like harmony. It feels like cooperation. It is neither. You agree when you do not actually agree. Not on large things, you would catch yourself there. On small things, the restaurant choice, the plan for the weekend, the interpretation of an event you experience differently. You agree because disagreement creates friction, and friction creates the possibility of conflict, and conflict creates the possibility of rejection. And somewhere in the deep machinery of your psychology, rejection still registers as existential threat. This is called conflict-avoidant compliance, the pattern of substituting agreement for authentic engagement because the anticipated cost of disagreement exceeds the anticipated cost of self-erasure. To a normal person, your agreeableness is pleasant. To a predatory mind, it is a perimeter test. Because if you will not hold your position on where to eat dinner, you will not hold your position on anything that matters. And now they know the entire territory is undefended. Every time you agree with something you do not believe, you are not keeping the peace. You are signaling that your boundaries are negotiable. And negotiable boundaries are, to the predatory mind, the same as no boundaries at all. The fifth behavior is the one most men confuse with generosity. You are always available. When they call, you answer. When they need something, you adjust your schedule. When they cancel and reschedule, you accommodate without comment. You believe this communicates reliability. What it actually communicates is that your time has no competing claims, that nothing in your life is more important than being present when someone else decides they want you present. In behavioral economics, this is a supply-demand signal. When supply is unlimited and unconditional, perceived value collapses, not because you are worth less, because the signal you broadcast says your availability costs nothing, and what costs nothing is treated as though it is worth nothing. The predatory mind reads excessive availability as a resource that can be extracted without consequence. They will increase their demands incrementally. Each time you accommodate without friction, the baseline shifts. What was once a favor becomes an expectation. What was once an expectation becomes an entitlement. Machiavelli understood this with cold clarity. The man who makes himself available to everyone makes himself valuable to no one. Your time is not a gift you hand out to prove your loyalty. It is the single non-renewable resource you possess. Protect it the way you would protect anything irreplaceable. The sixth behavior is the one that keeps you trapped. Someone wrongs you. They cross a line you both know exists. And instead of requiring repair, instead of demanding that they acknowledge what they did and demonstrate change, you forgive. Not because they earned it, because holding the boundary feels harder than releasing it. Because the discomfort of confrontation outweighs the discomfort of being wronged. Because somewhere in your conditioning, you learn that good people forgive, and you want to be good more than you want to be safe. This is called premature reconciliation, the restoration of relational normalcy before the violation has been acknowledged, addressed, or corrected. To the predatory mind, forgiveness without accountability is not mercy. It is permission. It tells them that the cost of crossing your boundary is zero, that they can transgress, wait briefly, and be restored to full standing without changing anything, and they will do it again. Not because they forgot, because you taught them the price. The seventh behavior is the one that will hurt the most to recognize. You stay. In friendships that drain you, in professional relationships that exploit you, in dynamics where you give consistently and receive almost nothing. You stay because leaving feels like betrayal, and you have built your identity around being the person who does not leave. This is called asymmetric loyalty, the pattern of maintaining commitment to a relationship in which the investment flows predominantly in one direction. You tell yourself it is loyalty, it is patience, it is seeing the best in people. But the predatory mind sees something different. It sees a resource that replenishes itself. Someone who will continue to give regardless of what they receive. Someone whose loyalty is unconditional. And unconditional loyalty, in the predatory framework, is the most exploitable resource that exists, because it means they never have to earn your presence. They never have to match your investment. They never have to change. You will adjust. You always have. The correction is not cruelty. It is reciprocity awareness. Loyalty is not a gift you give to prove your character. It is an investment you make in people who invest back. And the moment the ledger becomes permanently unbalanced, loyalty stops being a virtue and becomes a signal that says, I will accept whatever you give me, even if it is nothing. Now step back. Look at all 7 together. Emotional reactivity, compulsive over-explanation, premature disclosure, reflexive agreement, excessive availability, forgiveness without accountability, loyalty without reciprocity. They look like 7 separate problems. They are not. They are 7 expressions of a single underlying structure, a psychological architecture in which your sense of safety, worth, and belonging is located outside of yourself. When your emotional stability depends on how others treat you, you react visibly. When your sense of being right depends on others agreeing with you, you over-explain. When your need to be known overrides your need to be protected, you disclose too early. When your fear of rejection overrides your commitment to truth, you agree reflexively. When your value depends on being needed, you are always available. When your identity depends on being good, you forgive without requiring change. When your self-worth depends on being loyal, you stay long after the relationship has stopped deserving you. The root is always the same. The center of gravity is external. Your stability is borrowed, and borrowed stability can be revoked by anyone who holds the loan. Jung called this projection of the self, the unconscious placement of one's core sense of identity, value, and wholeness onto external objects, people, or conditions. When the self is projected outward, you do not possess yourself. You are possessed by whatever holds the projection. And the predator does not need to understand Jung. They do not need to know the theory. They simply feel the absence of something solid in you, the way a carpenter feels the hollow in a wall by knocking on it. They knock, it echoes, and they know. Machiavelli was not a cynic. He was a realist, operating in a century where the gap between what people said about human nature and how human nature actually operated was wide enough to swallow civilizations. He watched good men destroyed by their own goodness, not because goodness is weak, but because goodness without strategic awareness is a resource that others consume. He watched loyal men betrayed by the very people they refused to suspect. He watched honest men outmaneuvered by those who understood that honesty, deployed without calculation, is not a virtue but a vulnerability. And he wrote something that most people read as ruthlessness, but is actually the deepest form of compassion for anyone who has ever been exploited by their own decency. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. The title of good person, loyal friend, patient partner. These titles mean nothing if the man wearing them has no solid ground beneath his own feet. You cannot honor the title of loyal if your loyalty is compulsive rather than chosen. You cannot honor the title of kind if your kindness is driven by fear rather than strength. The 7 behaviors are not evidence that you are flawed. They are evidence that you built your house on borrowed ground. And the work ahead is not about becoming harder. It is about becoming yours. Here's the turn that most people miss. The 7 behaviors are not your enemy. They were your solution, the best one you had at the time. The child who learned to read every room, accommodate every mood, absorb every slight without visible reaction, that child was brilliant. That child survived. But you are not that child anymore. And the strategies that kept you alive in a world you could not control are now keeping you small in a world you absolutely can. The moment you stop seeing these patterns as personal failures and start seeing them as outdated survival code, something fundamental shifts. You stop hating the part of yourself that accommodates. You start understanding it. And understanding is the only foundation from which real change can be built. If that shift just landed, if something in this reframe has changed how you see your own patterns, alike puts it in front of someone who has been living inside these signals for years without a single word for what was happening to them. This is not about becoming someone who does not feel. It is about becoming someone whose feelings are witnessed internally before they are broadcast externally. It is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming sovereign. The predator does not avoid the man who feels nothing. The predator avoids the man who feels everything. and chooses what to show. The first practice is the pause protocol. When a stimulus arrives, a slight, a provocation, a moment of social pressure, you do not respond. You do not suppress. You witness. You create a half-second gap between what happens to you and what you show. Not to hide your feelings, to choose them. That gap is not emptiness. It is the space where a reactive organism becomes a deliberate person. Start with the smallest provocations, the dismissive comment at work, the passive-aggressive text, the moment someone takes credit for something you did. Feel the reaction rise. Watch it. Name it internally. Anger, shame, the need to be seen. And then choose your visible response as if you were selecting a tool from a shelf, not being dragged by a wave. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every single day of his reign. He called it the inner citadel, the psychological space that belongs to you regardless of what is happening outside it. Build it one pause at a time. The second practice is the access audit. This is not about trust. This is about architecture. You are going to map who in your life currently has access to your interior, your fears, your insecurities, your vulnerabilities, your emotional triggers, and you're going to ask one question about each of them. Did they earn it? Not did they ask for it. Not did they seem warm when you gave it. Did they demonstrate through sustained behavior over time that they would protect what you shared? If the answer is no, you do not need to confront them. You do not need to create drama. You simply stop giving new information. You close the door gently. You let time reveal whether they notice the change, and what they do about it will tell you everything you need to know about whether they ever deserved the access in the first place. This is not paranoia. This is perimeter management. Every sovereign territory has borders. Yours should too. The third practice cuts the deepest. You are going to look at the 5 closest relationships in your life and ask one question about each. If I stopped giving first, would this relationship continue? Not would the person be angry. Not would they notice. Would the relationship survive the withdrawal of your unilateral investment? If the answer is no, you have not been in a relationship. You have been in a subsidy. And subsidies, by definition, end the moment the funding stops. This is not about scorekeeping. It is about pattern recognition. The predatory mind depends on your inability to see the ledger clearly. It depends on your belief that giving more will eventually produce receiving more. It will not. Unilateral generosity does not inspire reciprocity in the predatory personality. It inspires escalation. Start small. Let one phone call go unreturned. Decline one request without explanation. Watch what happens. The people who respect you will adjust. The people who are extracting from you will escalate. And that escalation is the clearest diagnostic you will ever receive. Remember where we started. Someone in your life has already assessed you. They have already run the calculation. They have already arrived at a conclusion about what you will tolerate, what you will absorb, and what you will forgive without requiring change. But conclusions can be revised. The moment you stop broadcasting, the moment your emotional state is no longer readable on your face, the moment your explanations become brief and your boundaries become non-negotiable, the moment your availability has conditions and your loyalty has limits and your forgiveness requires earned repair, the signal changes. It does not go from green to yellow. It goes dark. And dark signals are the ones the predatory mind does not approach. Because dark means unknown, and unknown means risk. And risk is the only thing a predator genuinely avoids. Machiavelli did not write for the powerful. He wrote for the man who wanted to stop being consumed by power that was not his own. 500 years later, the mechanics have not changed. The assessment is still running. The signals are still broadcasting. The only variable that has ever mattered is whether you know what you are sending and whether you choose to send it. You were never the problem. The patterns were. And patterns once seen can be rewritten. The 7 signals are not who you are. They are what you learned. And what was learned can be unlearned. Not through force, but through the slow, deliberate work of becoming someone whose center of gravity lives inside their own chest. If this is the kind of thinking you want to continue doing, subscribe. There is more of this coming, and it goes this deep every time. You were never an easy target. You were just running code that someone else installed. Now you know the language. Now you rewrite it. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one.